Welcome to Jaguar Bootcamp, Setting Your Filters. The information in this presentation is the property of Innovative Timing Systems, LLC. All of this information is confidential and may not be disclosed to anyone outside of Innovative Timing Systems or your own company without written authorization from the President of Innovative Timing Systems. This presentation is only provided to customers who are under a current support agreement that is not expired. When you're preparing to time a race, particularly one that has some complex timing points or perhaps an unusual course layout, you may find it necessary to use what are called filters to make sure that you're only capturing the reads that you desire at a given time. Jaguar has a phenomenal set of filtering capabilities, and if you look under Race Info, you'll notice as you come down a few options, there's one called Filter Settings. Let's open that up, and we'll take a look at the various filters that are available to us in the software. Now keep in mind what filters are doing is when we read the chip and we store that information in the reader and then we retrieve it and bring it into the laptop on the software, the Jaguar software, we're going to look at that particular chip read and decide if that passes a set of criteria. Those criteria are just filters. Even if we filter out information, in other words, we're not writing it to the database, it's still being written to the log file. Very important to always remember that even if you filter out data, we're going to write that raw data to the log file. In case you've made a mistake, you can go back and you can find it. But generally speaking, when you use filters, that information is simply going to be filtered, meaning something might not be written to the database. It's as simple as that. Well, let's talk about the different types of filters that we have. And first of all, you'll notice filter 1 through filter 8. These are combinatorial, fancy way of saying that they work together in combination. And in fact, the very first filter is filter 1, and what Jaguar does when it reads a chip is it says, do they have a value set here? So it says, for example, ignore chip reads if the number is less than, let's say, 500. So if the chip/bib number is less than 500, we're essentially saying through this filter, do not store this in the database. We can also set a high value. So we can say, ignore chip reads if the number is more than perhaps 999. Now, why would we do that? Well, if we had a wave start for perhaps a marathon or for a triathlon, and we organized our bib numbers by wave. So let's say that, for example, wave 1 for our massive marathon we're doing today is going to be bibs 1 to 499. And then we're going to have wave 2, which is going to be 500 to 999. Essentially, by using filter 1, we could say the only chip reads that we want are those that are going to be from 500 to 999. So we can use this filter to control what bib numbers or chip numbers are being written to the Jaguar database. Now, we can take that one step further. We could actually say, okay, that's our range of bib numbers, but by using filter 2, we're going to say, I also want you to ignore chip reads if they're before 9 o'clock. So let's say that we know that our wave, that's 500 to 999, those bibs, we know that they're going to start in the race, but they shouldn't be recorded prior to 9 o'clock. We can say, ignore them. And in fact, we could even say, you know what, they had to have started by 9:10. If they started after that, then they started in the wrong wave and they're disqualified from the event. So you can actually use the bib numbers, as I've done here, in combination with these time settings. Now, I might also just take the bib numbers out. Let's say we're timing a race that's 1 to 5,000, and I don't really care about filtering on number range. Everybody's going to start at the same time, but I sure don't want any early reads, and I don't want any reads from people who turn around and come back. So let's say this is a 10K. And we're going to start at 9 o'clock. So we're going to say ignore any reads prior to 9 o'clock, just like you see here. We're also going to say nobody could have possibly finished before 9:30. And so if somebody happens to come back before that, we're going to filter that out. So you get the idea. We can filter on bib numbers and time, as you've seen here. Now, if we go to filter 3, we get even more sophisticated. We can say we want to filter on database times, and of course you have to have a database loaded to use this. So as an example, it says ignore chip reads prior to the database gun start plus X minutes. Wow, let's think about that for a second. Let's say we had assigned wave start times for a triathlon, and the gun start for wave 10 is going to go off at, say, I don't know, 9:30 in the morning. Well, you could actually put in the database that the start time for that individual is 9:30, the gun start time, okay? And then I could say, I want you to filter based on looking at the database time, the gun start time, plus X minutes. Why do I have the plus X minutes? And I'll set that to 5. Well, the reason is, what if I don't start on time? What if I'm delayed? What if there's, a problem? It was really windy and we decided to wait till the winds calmed down to put us in the water. In other words, you can say, I want you to ignore, but I also want to have an error margin, if you will, an error range or a margin of error, and that would be something like maybe 5 minutes. So you can set that as well. By the way, you can do this on filter 3 for both your gun start and your chip start. So you can use this and decide how you want to filter based on whether you're using gun or chip. Okay? And again, back over here, you can decide how many minutes. Now keep in mind, and I want to remind you of that, this is combinatorial, meaning I could have something where they have to pass filter 1, then they have to pass filter 2, then they have to pass filter 3. If none of these are set, then Jaguar would just ignore 1, 2, and 3. It would say, well, he hasn't said anything there, so we don't need to worry about that. But I could, in fact, start with filter 4, and let's take a look at that. Filter 4 says, I'm going to only accept chip reads for my 5K, and this is a really handy feature. Let's say you've got a 5K and a 10K on the same date, and the 5K is going to start at 9 o'clock, and the 10K is going to start at 9:30. And you don't want the 10K people who are standing around watching the 5K to be read. This always happens. We have athletes that are just standing around waiting for their race to start. So we could say at this point in time, we're only accepting chip reads for a 5K, or we could change it and say 5 or 10 or just a 10. Now, for this to work, you have to make sure that your database is loaded. In fact, when you check that box, you're going to get a warning prompt that says make sure your database is loaded if you're using this filter. If you don't have a database loaded, this filter is worthless. It won't do anything. All right, now let's take it a little bit further. Filter 5. This is the same filter as 4, except now we've introduced times. Why would we do that? Well, because we want to be even more specific about when somebody is allowed to start. So I'm going to say, I want you to prevent chip reads prior to, say, 0800, so 8 o'clock in the morning. For the 10K, I want you to prevent reads prior to 08, say, 30. Okay, so simply what I can do here is use times to make it even more specific. And I'll tell you where that can be really, really handy. If you have, say, a marathon that's a 2-loop course, you have a 5K, 10K going the same day, and you know that the 10Kers might be coming around on a loop, and we don't want to read them again until a certain time, we can use this filter for that purpose. So it gives us the ability to filter by division, as you see here, but it gives us the added dimension of having times as well. Okay, very simple. Now let's go on to filter 6. Filter 6 says, I want you to filter them out if they're a non-participant. In other words, let's think about this for a minute. The race is going to start at 9 o'clock. I'm at the finish line on a 10K. I know it's not possible for anybody to finish before, say, 9:30, okay? So I'm going to put in 0928:00. And I'm going to say, I want you to block all reads if somebody comes in before that time. Why would that happen? Well, somebody picked up the goodie bag. They wanted the shirt for the race, but they decided they didn't feel like running. But they do want to be at the finish line and cheer on a friend. Happens all the time. They'll pick up the bag. It happens to have a bib in it with our chip. Jaguar reads so well, as you already know. It'll read right through the bag, right through the paper, the little inserts, and it'll see that chip and it'll read it. And in fact, if they happen to be standing at the finish line, that could cause us a problem because we would have a read, and this person who didn't even compete would have basically just won the race. So you can block that chip read, and not only that, but it will permanently block that read until the next time you start Jaguar or you clear the blocks. So it's a convenient way to say, if you see anybody that's hanging around before the finish with a chip, go ahead and block them out and leave them blocked out until I clear the blocks. Quite a handy feature for those people who are standing around. Okay, our next filter, number 7, is to filter reads based on participant information. And you have to load a database if you're going to use this filter. And let's take a look. If I check this box, it says only accept a chip read if a name exists in the database for that chip number read. Now, why would I use this? Well, I'll give you a great example. You've got maybe a mountain bike event going on. People are registering for the event. And at the registration table, which is 1,000 feet away, they pick up their plate, their bike plate with our B chip on it, and they head over to the finish line because they want to see the race going on. Maybe their race doesn't start until 2 hours from now. And so they're standing over there. Well, let's think about that. They registered up at registration. They were handed their chip. We haven't brought that registration database down yet from the registration table to the timing system because we know that they don't start for 2 more hours, but the guy's standing there with his chip and we're reading it. So we're getting reads on a chip that's not yet in the race. So by using this filter, you can now say, don't accept a chip read unless the name exists in the database. Very handy feature. You could use it for running events, mountain biking, all kinds of events. And essentially it allows you to decide you're only going to accept chip reads for people who are registered and in the database. Finally, filter 8. This only affects the output file. If you're a really advanced Jaguar user, you might use these particular filters where you say, I only want to accept the first chip read or only a chip read if it's within X number of seconds of the previous read. Unless you're an advanced, expert sort of Jaguar user, you probably should not be using filter 8. It is truly for those individuals who are trying to do something very custom. Sometimes they've written their own software, for example, to store race history information, and they want a way to be able to get data out of Jaguar filtered in a particular format. And so that's what these are used for. So unless you're a very advanced user, just stay away from filter 8. You won't use it. And that's why it's the last one on the screen. Finally, and this is so critically important, if you set up all your filters here and you've done all that work, you have to check the box here that says turn the filters on. Okay? If you do not check that box, your filters will not work. It's very important that you check that box. Why do we have that box there? Well, if you think about it, what if your filters are set up and you forget that the filters are on and your next race starts and you go, oh my gosh, I still have filters on? Well, you could quickly come in here and just check that box, get out of the filter screen, and all of them are turned off collectively. You don't have to go edit the individual sections here of this screen. Makes it much, much faster to quickly turn them on and off again. Okay. Now, if you turn filters on, what you're going to notice when you come out of the software is it's going to say right here on the main screen of Jaguar, filters are on, and it's going to be in a bold blue so that you can't possibly miss it. Not only that, but we're going to remind you in this black window down here while you're collecting chip reads, we're going to remind you you've got filters turned on. Why are we going to do that? Well, I'll give you a great example and a tip, and hopefully if you'll remember this tip, it'll keep you out of trouble. You've decided you're only going to accept chip reads for a 5K because your 10K doesn't start yet. Well, you have your filters turned on and enabled here. You say, okay, I'm all set. I'm just going to accept for the 5K. My filters are on. And the 5K starts. You celebrate. You have a drink of champagne. You go, wow, Jaguar is just rocking today. We're doing so well. And it slips your mind that you have filters on and you go to start the 10K race. Well, guess what happens? They're not going to be stored in the database because you have filtering on, and these are 10K people, and you're only accepting 5K. So you're going to see this on. You're going to see reminder messages coming up a lot. It's going to tell you, don't forget your filters are on, and you're going to want to come back over here to your filter settings and say, wow, I need to get that corrected, and a quick and easy way to do that is just turn this box off. Of course, you could turn this off as well, but by just checking that box, you're going to be out of trouble and you'll be able to read chips again. Okay, so let's recap on the filters. What are they used for? Well, they're really used to decide what kind of information you want written to your database, and it gives you control over that information. You can filter by chip number, by time, by division and time. You can block people out. You can decide if they're in the database, then we'll store them. It gives you a powerful set of capabilities for controlling the information that's being written to your Jaguar database. If you're going to use filters, it's critical that you make sure to always look to see if they're on, and don't allow yourself to set a filter, forget about it, and then get in trouble when you're not storing your chip reads. Remember, even if you filter out the data, we're going to write that information to the log file, and in fact, we're going to tell you in the log file this chip was not written to the database because you had filters on. It means that you've always got a way, a backup, if you will, to go look at your chip reads. You could then type that information back into the Jaguar database and still produce your results. That concludes this module on filters. Thanks for attending. We'll see you again soon in another module.